So of course my goal was to try to hit all of the pedals, and it doesn't always work with creativity. You just want to be more creative as opposed to, oh, must demo this, must demo this, must demo this. But I'm going to get in each one of these pedals in depth as we go through this. So if you don't know, this is going to be basically a masterclass on effects usage for wind players specifically. I've been doing this for many years. I've been playing with effects since like 1999. I've gone through a whole bunch of different iterations of everything. And I figured, since it's becoming more popular among wind players, it's always been popular to use effects with guitar players and bass players. They just abuse the hell out of that, right? But now wind players are starting to abuse it too, and I'm all into that, right? So I was hoping with this little masterclass to introduce you guys to the sounds you can get, and also mostly tell you the roadblocks and stumbles that I've gone through, so that you don't have to go through the same ones. And this is the first time I'm doing this, so it's kind of like a practice session for me. So I thank you all for coming out. And normally I was thinking, if I'm doing this in front of a group of strangers, I know you all, but if I was doing this in front of a group of people that I don't know, I would want to get to know them. So the questions I would ask are, how many of you play wind instruments? You better raise your hand. Go with me here. Yeah, there you go. That does count. Yes. Do you blow wind into it? Yes. And how many of you actually have used effects pedals before? Anyone?
Exactly.
Oh, right. That counts. That counts. My next question would be if anyone is currently using effects pedals in a live or recorded setup, then I guess that's a no. So this is the perfect audience. My first audience is the perfect audience for this demonstration. So let's dive into it. Like I said, my original run through like a couple weeks ago was I started out by explaining every type of pedal that there is, and like how the circuit works and how it creates the sound and the origins of it. That's what took like an hour. And I was like, you know what? None of you want to know that. And if you want to know that, there's Google. So just ask Google about all those questions. I'm going to touch upon them a little bit as I go through this, but I'm not going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on sounds. And so with that, I'm going to just dive right into the board that I have, which has many of the effects that I'm going to talk about and many of the effects that you would want to incorporate in your playing. But a couple of those effects that I don't have, and I will try to just talk through those.
Can I ask you an introductory question?
Yes.
I think will be
Please.
helpful? Outside of a live setting for like music to tape, what is the difference between using hardware like this versus say effects, digital effects live?
Okay, this reminds me of one thing that I wanted to say to start things out, which is the purpose of this talk is not for me to tell you how to do something, it's for you to figure everything out yourself. So don't listen to what anyone has to say, including me, because what I'm going to say to you is there is no difference. It's all in your ear, right? If something sounds good,
experience of using it.
It's like, so a lot of these recording plugins and stuff are modeled off of these.
Right.
And most of these in fact, are modeled off of the original pedals that were created using chips and circuits that don't even exist anymore.
Right.
So everything is a model of a model of a model.
Right.
So basically it's just whatever your ear likes. I always use this plugin when I'm using my DAW. I use this Waves plugin called H Delay. I think it sounds great. It sounds better than any of like the delay pedals I have here, so I'll just use that. But if I'm recording and there's a specific sound that I want that I know I have here, instead of like digging through all the models that they have there, to find something that might sound similar, I'll just use this because I just know. It's all up to you, your ears, what you're used to, what is easiest for you. Now, you're going to find people that say, oh no, hell no, don't ever use this stuff in in software because that's, it doesn't sound organic, it doesn't sound real.
Right.
Don't listen to them. Listen to your own ear. Okay. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Sorry.
But yes, definitely do not listen to anyone except yourself and your own 2 ears. That's why you're a musician. So before diving into the board itself and the pedals, the most important thing, arguably the most important part for wind players, is how do we get into our first pedal, right? Guitar players, they have pickups, a 1/4 inch output, plug it right in, they're ready to go. We wind players aren't that lucky. There are a few different options for this. As you can see, the option that I've chosen is a clip-on mic. I've mostly been using clip-on mics my entire career, and it's just easy because you can't really see the bass unit here, but it's really small. I actually just got this. It's an upgraded version of the one that I used to use. The reason I got it is because the bass unit is really tiny. It fits right on my board. The reason I like these clip-on mics, whether it's wireless like this one or wired, as long as it has a bass unit, the bass unit is usually plugged in so it's powered, and it usually has a 1/4 inch out, and that goes right into your first pedal. So that solves both of the problems that wind players have, which is 1, how do you power the mic, and 2, how do you get into your first effect pedal. So this is the solution that's been working for me, but there are other solutions. I've seen people with a microphone drilled into their brass mouthpiece. It's a little tiny hole that they drill in. It pokes out on this side a little bit, and it's a tiny, tiny condenser mic. And there's a cable that comes out of that, and it goes into a unit that powers it, and then it goes into your first pedal. That's a possibility. I don't want to fuck up this Bob Breeze mouthpiece, so I don't do that. I do know a sax player friend of mine, Sean Nowell, actually uses a mic where the mic for a saxophone
goes here, right?
So it goes into the mouthpiece, so it sits like somewhere inside the mouthpiece. The cable comes out through the cork. I don't know if he has to file the cork or if it's just like pressure or whatever.
I like this better.
But those two, I'll tell you, there is an advantage to those two that I'll get to in a second.
I was really
There are definite advantages to that. And then there are other options like a contact mic, like a pickup. Basically, you just stick it onto your instrument and it picks up the vibrations. I tried to use one of those, but I never got it to work. I don't know if it's because trumpets are kind of thick brass and it doesn't vibrate as much. I don't know what the reason is. I tried it for maybe a week or something, couldn't get it to work, and I just gave up on it because I prefer this. The final solution, which I would not recommend, is just a plain mic on a stand. And the reason for that is, let's take like a 57, right? Shure SM57, the world's standard mic. It has an XLR, but the first problem is that your pedals won't take an XLR. You have to convert it to 1/4 inch. But the microphone isn't getting any power now because if you're just using cable, so it's not going to give you a loud enough signal. There is still a solution to that. You can go from the SM57 into a preamp. And they make these small preamps about the size of my unit here. It's like $50. I used to have an ART something or other. It's just small, and that does the same. That does the job that this bass unit does. It has power. It takes an XLR and it gives you a 1/4 inch up. So all of these are options. And like I said, it's the most important thing for us wind players to be able to get into our first pedal. So now that it's fresh in my mind, I want to tell you what the advantage of these like crazy mouthpiece and pickup options are. One of my first pedals here is distortion. And I'm sure you all know what distortion is. Guitar players abuse the hell out of it. It's basically imitating an amp that you're overdriving to the point that all of its circuits are clipping and just like makes ugly noises. The problem with using that with a mic And you might want to cover your ears now. The problem with using that with the mic is that that happens really, really easily. And the reason is because the distortion pedal is recreating the sound of a overdriven amp, so it has all these frequencies that are already overdriven in the pedal. So if the mic hears that and puts it back into the pedal, it's just like way too much. So the solutions to that are, one possibility is just don't get the sound anywhere near your mic. I mean, that'll solve it. If the speaker's all the way on the other side of the room, it's probably not going to feed back. However, then you won't be able to hear it. And I like hearing my effects so I can kind of interact with them, right? But that is a solution. Make sure the mains are way far ahead of you and you don't have a monitor, and you'll be fine.
Can I ask a basic question? Do you happen to be like recording this or anything? 'Cause otherwise there's a couple notes I want to take. Perfect.
Yep, as long as my battery lasts.
I'll be capturing some live videos.
Sweet.
Awesome.
To share that
Good.
Have you found out what is like a nice sweet spot for distance?
That is the next solution that I have, which is you turn down the amount of distortion until it works. And here's the thing, with distortion, even with a single distortion pedal that you bring around wherever you go, same mic, same distortion pedal, the room, the speaker, the monitor, everything affects it so much that your distortion solution will be different every single day. So you have to literally dial it in every time you go to use it. And that's why, so right now, I just dialed it in really quick before starting. So I think if I set it here, what you're hearing is my delay, and I'm going to turn that way down. So you see it's not feeding back because I've turned the distortion down enough and I'm standing far enough away that I can hear it, but it's not feeding back through the mic. That's the solution I always take. There's another solution. I'm sorry, I should have included this in when we were talking about the mics. How many of you know the Yamaha silent brass system? That is actually a perfect solution because it's a microphone inside a mute, and it seals. You know, it's like practice mute. It seals. No sound is getting in or out. So that you can do whatever the hell you want. The problem with that is that it changes your sound, it changes the response of the instrument, it changes so many things. I actually used to use the silent brass for years when I was playing with this this computer DJ guy, and it worked great. You know, your sound, your volume is perfectly controllable because there's no acoustic sound coming out, but it changes the sound and it changes the response. So,
more pressure.
you know,
And is
not
that only a solution for like trumpet, trombone?
correct. Yeah.
I assume
Yep.
they'll make one for sax.
They don't make a silent brass for sax, although I've seen this crazy contraption that they call the sax mute, which is basically a saxophone case.
Yeah, like
with
a
drum holes.
Oh, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, I've only seen pictures of it. I've never seen it in person. But yeah, so that's not really a solution for reed instruments where you have keys that the air escapes out of. So I think that's all I want to say about distortion and mics, but those are kind of the most wind instrument specific items I'm going to get into today. So do you have any more questions about like getting your sound in the first pedal or distortion usage?
What's the mic you're using that goes on?
Oh, so this one is a Samson. I think that's the Sam Ash house brand. And Sam Ash, as you know, is going out of business, I believe. So I don't know what the solution, I don't know what the long-term production plans are for that. But who is it? There's another brand that Michael Brecker used to use. It's this exact thing with the transmitter on the mic, and it's a short mic, but it's like a super luxury brand. It's got like a gold-plated grill. They went all out. So this costs like $400. That one I think costs like $1,700 or something. So
with the receiver out.
yeah, with the receiver. Yeah, it comes as a package.
Cool.
Do you have a preferred, or is there, I suppose, not just for you, but is there preferred models or brands of microphones for different wind instruments that you would recommend?
So I would recommend this one because it's the one I use. I like it because the transmitter is on the mic, no belt pack and no wire going in the belt pack, and because the receiver is really small. That's what I would recommend.
What were you using before?
Before I was using the larger version of this, so the mic looks the same, but the bass unit was much larger. Before that, I was using a Shure, which had a belt clip. And then before that, I was using something else. But yeah, I've gone through a few mics. I actually sold Bruce my Shure that I was using. Now, while I'm talking about mics, yes, these mics are not going to sound as good as like, you know, a ribbon mic or a Royer or like a, you know, EV or something like that. And a lot of wind players, a lot of wind players will say, "Oh man, but I want a really good sounding mic." And my answer to that is, listen, you're going through all this shit. Why do you care? It's gonna sound like completely fucked up at the end. So that's why I don't care if I get a cheap mic, as long as it works, as long as it puts my sound in there. That's the important thing. So. So yeah, moving along on my board here, I have, actually first in front of the distortion, what I have is a envelope filter. Do you guys know what the concept of an envelope? The envelope, and I'm not going to get this technically correct, I'm just going to give you the definition as it applies in real life. Your envelope is your volume. Okay, so the lower your volume, the less this pedal is going to open up. As you get louder, it opens up. And you're definitely familiar with the sound of an envelope filter because it's like that guitar, that funk guitar sound, like this. You know?
So it's similar to a wah, but you can't control the...
It's, okay, so now I'll explain just the general category of filter effects. This is an envelope filter, this is a wah-wah, and this has what's called an auto-wah on it. All of these are filters. Filters you can think of like an EQ. Like if you've seen a graphic EQ with all these sliders, each slider controls one bandwidth, right? So what these pedals do is it allows you to choose which band you want to emphasize. With the envelope filter, my volume determines which band is emphasized. If I'm softer, it's the lower bandwidths. If I'm louder, it's the higher bandwidths. I think you can actually reverse that too, but I haven't tried. With a wah, if my heel is down, then the lower band is emphasized, and as I move my foot, it sweeps it up to the higher. So it goes like. So that's the concept of a filter. It like filters out just one frequency to emphasize. So the envelope filter is controlled by how loud you play, which, by the way, is a real advantage to wind instruments because guitar players hit their guitar and that's all they have. We can control our envelope while we're playing. So this is not the greatest example of that, but let's see, if I add this. So I can do stuff like that just with my volume. No guitar player in the world can do that. So advantage horn players, right? There are a couple of other effects that it's really cool to be able to use your volume to control them, and that I think is where we shine as horn players through effects. Before horn players started to use effects, no one had really heard about doing stuff like this before, so we got to lean into that. So that's my envelope filter, my wah filter, and the auto wah. What controls the bandwidth of the auto wah is an LFO, low frequency oscillator. Are we familiar with LFOs? No?
Safe to assume that
I-
don't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
Just in case.
It's all right. Bring it down.
Only insofar as like I've messed around with
Because
this.
also you're
LF
doing wonderful
LFO.
explanations. Do it.
LFO is just, it's exactly what it sounds like. Low frequency, so not high frequency like a sound wave, but even this is a low frequency compared to a B flat, right? Low frequency oscillator. So just all it does, it's a little chip inside all of these pedals that just goes, and you can control if it goes like this or like this, but that's all it does. That's its only job. So if I go, where's my, I think this is it. So here you hear. So I was just moving the knob that controls the LFO rate. So this one, an auto wah, you're basically just like leaving it on. And it's just going to do its job. Yeah.
You know when you see people playing with themselves, and I don't mean in a rude way, but like musically when they have obviously some sort of like hardware-based memory bank to like play the thing in, maybe with the effect, and then like lock it in and another thing. What is that? What is that hardware-wise?
Let me see if
you know what I'm talking about.
when I get to that pedal in my chain, see if it answers your question. So remember that question and see if that's what you're asking. If not, I'm misunderstanding your question. I'll just re-ask it. Yeah.
For the auto wah, I know you're controlling.
Yeah.
Does it have a knob for control delay as well?
No. Oh, well, I had my delay pedal on.
Okay. Oh, I see.
And the reason I have my delay pedal, I have one delay here, I have one delay here, I have one delay here. I have a lot of delays. Why do I have delays? Because I love it. But because I'm trying to like justify my own behavior for some reason. I don't have to because it's me. But I think my thinking behind it is guitar player, piano, drums, like basically any stringed instrument, any percussion instrument. When you play a note, it doesn't really end. You know, when you pluck it on guitar, even when you lift your finger off the fretboard, the body is vibrating, the other strings are sympathetically vibrating. If you play a note on piano, 88 strings are vibrating there. It's like, it's a bigger sound, right? The advantage of wind players is that when we end our sound, it's over. All you hear is the reverb in the room, right? But I like to have things go on a little longer, and just like make myself bigger. So that's why I like delay, and I have 3 of them because they're in different parts. They're in different places in the signal path, so I can control different things differently. So I want to delay before my wah because that'll make it big, and the wah you'll hear more of the wah's effect. But I also want one after the wah because if I go heel down, that almost like completely ends the sound. So I want the sound to keep on going. So I need another delay aspect. So these are the things that, as you get familiar with these, you'll come up with these ideas too. might not work for you. It might not be a thing that you want to do, but your ear will tell you.
Is it can this system basically be thought of as like one sort of linear path with all these pedals along it, or there's sort of branches to use like a less nerd term?
Question. Excellent question.
Something like a programmer.
I
like
was going to get into that
Okay.
later, but I might as well get into it now to answer your question. So there is a concept called a looper, a true bypass looper. It's not the looper that will answer your question. This is a different. Both of you are asking about loopers, but different definitions. I'm gonna answer your looper question now. What a looper? I need two hands for this. What a looper, true bypass looper does is, let's say you want to control all three of these pedals at the same time. You want them to be in a separate chain, different branch. What you do is you put a true bypass looper in front of it. It goes out here, comes right back into the pedal. So this pedal, you turn it on, it goes through this whole thing. You turn it off, it goes straight through without even seeing these.
Oh, cool.
So
meanwhile, you can't change the individual components, right?
You always can. You can turn on the looper and then turn each of these on individually, or turn them off, or change them. But if you want to operate in a way that I know I'm going to have these 2 or 3 effects on at the same time, I want them to come on at exactly the same time. I don't want to do a little dance here, Then you do your little bypass loop.
Yeah.
And it is analogous to what's called an effects loop on an amp. Because an amp, a guitar amp, you plug the guitar into it, it actually has a little true bypass loop in the back, so that you can put all your pedals there. You don't have to plug your guitar into the pedals and then into the amp. I actually have a pedal. This delay pedal has an effects loop built in, and this little thing is a compressor pedal that I have in the loop. So the only thing that's affected by this pedal is the delay. Nothing else is. It doesn't see any of these other pedals. So the reason I do that, I'm sidetracking, I'm sorry about this, but I also want to explain all this. The reason that I have a compressor in the effects loop of this delay pedal is because this delay pedal has a very cool feature where I can send it, I can make that happen. Now, if I keep that pressed too long, it'll just get blasted. So what I did was I put this compressor in there, and what a compressor does is it basically, you set a threshold, like a volume threshold, and once the volume input hits that threshold, the compressor basically just turns the volume down. That's a very simple way of explaining it. There's a lot of other things it does, but it'll basically keep it from getting too blasty loud. So now with that on, if I do this, if I do a step on this, it's not going to get any louder than that. So that makes that work for me. Because otherwise, before I got the compressor, I was on live gigs and I'd want to use that thing, and it would just get, everyone in the audience would be like, what the fuck just happened, man? Which, it's okay once a night, but you don't want to do that to your audience too often. So yeah, that's my delay and the little bypass loop, and that I mean, right now, other than this compressor, everything in my chain is linear, like I said.
Yeah. But it lets you sort of segment the.
Yep.
We should call it a board, or we call this whole setup, I guess.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that is possible. Let's see. Any other questions so far? I've touched on.
Questions, I'm sorry.
Cool.
Here's another basic one.
Yeah.
I've noticed you referring to things as pedals, and me being kind of basic and ignorant, etc. I look up there and I'm like, I see a pedal. It's the wah-wah. Right, that's a pedal. It's a pedal. What is meant by pedals?
That's a great question. I don't know. I've never thought to ask that question. I mean, I consider the pedal because they have buttons.
Yeah, it's button.
Yeah.
It's still a
But
pedal.
I really don't know what qualifies something as a pedal as
Alright.
opposed to, because something that looks like this size or whatever, could be a little tiny rack unit effect. And that's not a pedal, that's a rack unit effect, right? And I bet this even has rack ears that you can screw into it. And if you rack it up, is it now a pedal or is it a rack mount? I don't know.
Right.
So I can't answer that question, sorry.
Back in the day, you used to hear the term stomp box.
Yeah. It's a box that you stomp on. yeah. Yeah, but that's a good question. I don't know. Let's ask Google later and see what Google says. What is the definition of a pedal? Okay, so far I've talked about these two and my delay. Now this one, okay, this is, delay is my favorite. I mean, if I had only one effect to bring to a desert island, it would be delay. But I love pitch shifters. This is kind of a big tank of a pitch shifter. This is the Eventide pitch factor. It's got a lot of different bells and whistles on it, but essentially, I mean, a pitch shifter should be pretty obvious to everyone. It takes your input pitch and you can tell it where the output pitch should be. And you have a choice of whether to mix in your dry signal or not. I always mix in my dry signal, and plus, it's coming out of my bell. You're always going to hear my dry signal. So, and most pitch shifters that I know of, in fact, I'm going to say every pitch shifter that I have ever heard of can only do either one or two additional notes. So the most notes that you'll get is 3. Your dry signal plus the 2 shifted pitches. And there are 2 general classes of pitch shifters. One is parallel pitch shifter, and another is a harmonizer or an intelligent pitch shifter. And at the risk of sounding pretty obvious about this, a parallel pitch shifter, you tell it how much you want the pitch to shift, and no matter what you play, it like spits out exactly that note. So if I set it to a major third up, all right, I play a C, it plays an E. I play a D, it plays an F sharp. I play an E, G sharp, and so on and so forth. It's just like spits that right out. A harmonizer, on the other hand, it plays a note in the key that you give it. So you have to tell it what key you're playing in. So it has an additional knob that sets which of the 12 keys you're in, which of the 12 major keys you're in. So, and then you don't set it on a major third or a minor third, you just set it on a third, and it does it in the scale. So if I set it to the key of C, and I set it to a third up, I play a C, it plays an E. If I play a D, it plays an F natural, not an F sharp, because it's the same within the key. That was made really famous by like all these 80s rock guitar players that were doing all these like harmonized lines, you know those like kind of solos that be like Van Halen and like all those guys would like all those guys did that. So to me, first of all, and again, this is my opinion, don't let me influence you, but I'm going to tell you anyways. To me, it sounds very cheesy and very dated, and also, I'm never playing in the same key for longer than a few bars, so I'm not going to be there and like change the key every time. No. Again, I work with parallel pitch shifters exclusively. Okay. So I'm just going to tell you how I use it. I like to use fourths. It's my favorite interval because it's really open. It'll work over almost any key. It just sounds open enough that I can even take like fast solos over changes, and you don't really notice it because it's such a consonant sound, right? So I'll use a fourth up, and I also use a fourth up and a fourth down to like create this huge sus chord in an inversion. And I was using that earlier, and that's what this is. To me, it's a very pleasing sound. It's very open. The two notes, which I was playing, so that was a total of 3 notes, me in the middle, and then a fourth up and a fourth down. That gets a little too thick if there's like a lot of other chords going on. But the fourth up sounds. So it almost sounds just like a little thing up there, like adding like vibrance or something up top, as opposed to like, oh my God, that note is not in the correct key, it's not in the chord. But I find that fourths work really well. I also sometimes do this thing where, is this it? What is this? Yeah, I have a couple of crunchy settings here that I use sporadically. This is a minor third up and a half step down. So it's. Again, you can't use it all the time. It has to be kind of more of an open setting.
It still doesn't sound as crunchy as I would have thought.
Oh, I could do 2 half steps, and then it'd be really crunchy.
Like I still found that pretty pleasing.
Yeah, exactly.
Play it. Yes.
Did any of you, by any chance, I posted this way too late for any of you to see, but did any of you listen to John Hassel at all? So one thing that John Hassel does, and I want to play an example of this. So one thought that you might have immediately with pitch shifters, oh, you get 2 extra notes, make a chord, right? You know, set it with a major third up and a fifth up. You got a major triad. You know, play it like a guitar player, play it like a keyboard player. Of course I've thought of that. Do I do it? No, because I've just never figured out how to make it sound not cheesy. Again, the cheesiness. Like, because if you have one interval set and you just move it around, it just sounds like dumb. It's like a piano player that hasn't learned how to comp.
Yeah.
It's like bling, 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 bling. You know, it doesn't sound cool like with voice leading or anything like that. I haven't really gotten that to work well. But I did a deep dive into John Hassel like a couple months ago, which is why I wanted to listen to him, and which is why we'll listen to him now. But he is able to use chords. Like, I was transcribing one of his songs, and it was a major chord and a minor chord. He had major triad, minor triad. He would switch between them and just use it. But it's because his music is very open. It's not like there are no changes. It's more like just ethereal kind of stuff. And I also remembered that I did not connect this to the Wi-Fi, so I can't play that for you right now.
So we're gonna get the password?
I have the password. It's just like it'll take me a second to set it up, and I'd rather just like roll with it.
Yeah, I got a signal. I got a signal if you want me to.
Look up John Hassel. Last night the moon came. Something. Yeah.
So when you're setting the intervals, is it like do you see the different, like is there something that's visual, or do you all just play and then check?
So this particular pedal, there are a bunch of banks that I save programs in.
Mm-hmm.
So I set it and then I save it, and it just tells me what bank it is. So I have to remember which one it is. I used to use a Boss PS3, which is a pitch shifter. Again, dual voice parallel pitch shifter, and it's more analog. It's got knobs that you like set the pitch. So you still can't tell exactly what interval it is, but I can see that this is left of center and this is right of center. So I know this one's higher, this one's lower. Or if they're both left, then I know they're both lower. But there are probably pedals that have like a display that show you exactly what it is. I don't know what pedal that might be.
Yeah.
No, what's the name of the tune one more time?
Last night the moon came something. See that?
Dropping its clothes.
Yeah, that one. Dropping. I knew it was something slightly sexual, but I couldn't remember exactly what.
That led me to one more question.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned using, I assume, some kind of software then to like save.
No,
banks, or
that's all built in the pedal.
Oh, okay.
These newer pedals are basically computers.
Okay, that's cool.
So-
my follow-up would have been like, oh, do you recommend like you gotta have like an iPhone for a lot of this shit to work with it, or like a Mac?
I know that there's a pedal company that all of their effects, all of their new ones, you can plug via USB to a computer and program it there. You don't have to though.
Okay, cool.
At this point, I don't know of any pedal where you have to plug it into a computer to make it work.
Okay, that's cool.
It's just, it makes it easier for you to like change settings, because then they're all virtual knobs and you can like type in a number instead of like having to dial in the number. But then it always saves back to the pedal, so you don't need a computer or a phone or anything to control it.
Good way to export, I would imagine.
Yeah. And you can export it, you can save it to your computer. So like this one has 20 banks. Let's say I have like 50 that I want to program. I dump the 20 into my computer, program another 20, then I can use that. But then if I ever need those 20 back, I have to dump this and then reload those. But it gives you more options, yeah.
Had John Hassel's Last Night the Moon Came.
Yes, that one.
And hopefully this is the version.
It's got a black and white cover. I think there's only one version.
There's someone just uploaded this online.
Oh, okay. So those are actual triads that he's playing on trumpet. But you see the background is so sparse that it's basically nothing like that. It's another gator. This is
Balance is very clear in the sound of the triads too.
Yeah. So it's very upfront as well. So he's basically saying, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is what's like the primary focus. Whereas normally when I'm playing, I'm trying to play the band, and I'm not necessarily the primary focus. So if I'm playing this big triad, that sounds punch from the rest, it's like, cool, thank you.
Yeah.
That was perfectly timed. Let's see. So pitch shifter. Oh, while we're on this pedal, it also has so much. Since this is like a new, big, huge digital pedal, it's got so many other bells and whistles. Just want to show a couple of them to you. It's got this like kind of reverby, undefined pitch thing. So it's kind of like a reverby, but you can tell there are other pitches in there. I just don't know what they are. Then it has this thing, which I describe as a sample and hold. And sample and hold is another one of those terms that I don't know the actual definition of it. I just know when I hear it. And this kind of sounds like this. This has a little more pitch shiftingness in it, but listen to this. So the that's very typical of a sample and hold, but since this is a pitch shifting pedal, it's doing a lot. Each note is like a random different pitch. That's a really cool effect I throw in there. What else is there? I think that's about it for like what I use. But there are a bunch of other crazy like effects in this particular box. This is also my most advanced pedal. Most of my other ones are like single purpose pedals, and that's what I prefer because my brain is simple. And I was like, one thing, I stomp on it, makes one sound. Good, makes sense to me.
That actually, I had two questions about that related to that. Because the first is that, for one, are the single-use pedals that you have, are those self-designed? Did you make those?
No.
Okay.
All of these I bought them. Yeah.
And the second is, I was going to ask you, what are your feelings on multi-effects pedals?
I'm gonna get to that at the end.
Okay.
But yeah, remember that because I am gonna address that. Let's see. Going through my any questions on pitch shifting and or this pedal in particular or anything? No.
How, just a general question, I guess, like how long did it take you to come up with this particular signal change?
It's a work in progress, right?
It's
So
always
since 1999, 24 years, 25 years.
So this is kind of like,
This is the
your main
culmination.
setup, and you may have like other pedals you bring in and out, but you don't have like this rig and then another full one.
No. Oh no. Yeah, I'm not that OCD, although I have nothing against that. And I know that some people do have that. They have their big rig, their medium rig, or like this thing for jazz gigs, this thing for rock gigs, whatever.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah. But you know what? To be honest, what you see here is maybe a tenth of all the pedals that I have. So I've already put in all the expenses.
Wow.
So many pedals at all.
What would you say the difference is between delay, echo, reverb?
Excellent question.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I mean, it seems like it's like reverb, echo, and delay, or something. I don't know.
So echo is not really used.
It's not echo. It's not real.
It's not a real term in terms of
Right.
effects. It's either reverb or delay.
Right.
Delay. The only way that I explain it is delay. You can actually kind of hear the gaps between each note, like dot.
Yeah.
Whereas reverb is so quick that you can't hear bop bop. You don't hear that immediate bounce back. It's like actual reverb where. Okay, sure, in Notre Dame or something, you will hear bop bop, but in most contexts, it's just such an immediate reflection off the walls. So that's what reverb is. But you're right, they're both time-based effects, and there are a lot of pedals that are both reverb and delay, because they're like, just turn it so far down that it turns from delay to reverb.
So it's more about like measuring the response time.
Yeah. The first delay or the first reflection or what have you. I mean, they do sound different. If you listen to reverb and you listen to that, they definitely sound different. So there's definitely some different signals processing happening.
Thing, it sounds different.
Yeah.
It's just hard to articulate.
Yep. Exactly. Let's see. The next category of effect that I want to talk about is this guy here. And I actually literally bought that for the purpose of demonstration. It's a modulation pedal, and it's a multi-modulation pedal, so it has a bunch of different types of modulation effects. And modulation is, it's a sine wave based effect, really. The big three are chorus, flange, and phaser. They all do very similar things, but in a slightly different way. Basically, you take your sine wave, and this is, by the way, Doug, this is the only thing that I would have used the projector for.
Oh yeah.
But I figured my hand also serves as a whiteboard, right? So you take the sine wave. What chorus does is it takes the exact sine wave and it just shifts it like a couple of milliseconds. So what you get is an effect as if there are two of you playing, and one of you is playing like just a hair in front or behind the other person, and it gives you kind of a like a multi-big band kind of effect, like this. I don't know if you can hear it well. This is without, and this is with. thickness. I can max out all the controls and it'll sound like you're underwater. And this is another side note. If you max out all the controls on any pedal, it generally sounds like kind of way out there in ways that the pedal manufacturer didn't necessarily want it to sound. But sometimes these are the coolest effects that you can find. So, you knew where I was going. You're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I immediately want to max out all the knobs. So yeah, what I'll try to show you is the more kind of typical settings, but you can also just go way out and it'll sound like that. So that's chorus. Flanging is basically exactly like chorus, except it moves the sine wave further out, so you tend to hear more of the destructive waveforms, like kind of canceling each other out sometime. And that sounds kind of like this. Let's see. Again, it sounds very much like chorus, but you can hear a little more of like the actual cancellation happening. This is like more dramatic. And then phaser. Phaser is exactly, again, the same thing, except what it does first is it flips the phase of your sine wave, and then it shifts it. Basically the same thing, but it is created in a different way. Oh, and by the way, all these effects, generally modulation effects, use an LFO so that the sine wave is not always displaced by exactly the same amount. It just like moves it back and forth a little bit. So that's one of the knobs that I was playing with. So you can hear it here. That's with a slow LFO. That's with a really fast LFO. In addition, there are other effects called modulation that don't work in exactly the same way, but for some reason, traditionally, they've all been lumped in together. One of my favorites actually is tremolo, which is literally just turn the volume up and down. That's all it does. And this is, let me just play it. So it's just turning volume up and down according to the LFO speed. And there are generally three kinds of tremolos. One that is more sine wave shaped, like this one, like nice and even. Then there is a square wave, which is just on, off, on, off. And there's also a triangle wave, which I don't have here. But one thing I like to do, I rehoused the tremolo pedal in a washout. I didn't bring that out because it's really heavy. But it allows me to control the LFO with my foot. So what that ends up sounding like is this. Except I can do that with my foot while playing. So that is a cool way to use that. I don't know why manufacturers don't do that. I mean, it just seems like a really cool thing to have, like be able to control the speed with your foot. But if you find one, let me know. Okay. Let's see. Another common modulation effect. Again, they call it modulation. To me, it's not really modulation. But do you know Hammond B3 organs and the big Leslie speaker that comes with it? Now the Leslie speaker It's a Leslie cabinet has two speakers, a high speaker, a tweeter, and a big bass speaker, and they both rotate in the cabinet independently of each other. So it gives this real, I can see why they call it modulation, because it kind of gives phasing effects, because depending on where the rotor is pointed at any given moment, you know, it takes a little longer to get to your ear. And they make all sorts of great pedals that have that sound. It's just a very specific sound that I don't use very often, so I don't have one. But those are great pedals. Finally, this is kind of the last thing I want to talk about before opening it up to more questions and maybe demos. But let's see. I am way off my notes, which is fine. Want to talk more specifically about delay, because it's my favorite effect, right? And this gets into a little bit of one of the major debates among guitar players mostly, is digital versus analog. You might hear that, and this is yet another thing that please don't listen to anyone. Only listen to yourself, because everyone has a very strong opinion about this, and none of them are right, but all of them are right at the same time. One of those things. So digital versus analog, that applies to all effects pedals, in addition to delay, but I'll talk about it in the context of delay. The old school pedals, like when they first started coming up with effects for guitar players, those are considered analog. Even though they use chips, you know, they use like silicon chips, and they use circuits and all that stuff, but that's what we refer to when we talk about analog. Digital happened once we invented transistors and, like, you know, all these capacitors and resistors that will make a circuit sound cleaner, basically. So the old delays had a chip that all it did was it just took the input node, delayed it, and then spit both out. Then you'd have to have another chip next to it that did the same thing. Took those two notes, delayed each one of those, and spit out 4 notes, right? And then so on down the line, eventually you got like all the delays you need. And there's a very cute term for this. It's called bucket brigade. Like, you know, when you're putting out a fire with a bucket brigade, you know, grab a bucket from the person next to you, hand it off, hand it on, put it out the fire, and it comes all the way back. And just like a bucket brigade, as you're moving this stuff, water splashes out, right? In the case of the chips, these bucket brigade chips would cut off high end a little bit of high end every time. So if you go through a bunch of these chips, you've lost most of your high end. It sounds very dark. I would say muddy, but someone who likes it would say, oh, dark. Whatever. So until digital delays were invented, that's the sound of a delay. That was the only delay sound that you had. And guitar players got used to it, and guitar players and musicians in general tend to be like more old school. They're like, well, this is the way I used to do it, so this is the way I'm going to keep on doing it. Right? So when we came out with digital delays, like nice, clean, and crisp, this is exactly the note that you played into it coming out. Isn't that great? They're like, no, we want that old stuff. That's what I'm used to. Now, I personally prefer digital sounding because I'm used to, trumpet is a very high-end, you know, instrument. So if you take off all the high end, you can't really hear anything anymore. So I prefer the digital side. You may prefer the analog pedals. And anyways, today, there's no such thing as a true analog pedal, because all these chips, they stopped making them back in the 60s. So they don't even exist anymore. So what you'll get is you'll get analog voiced delays. And all that means is they put a little chip in there that like turns the EQ down. I'm like, why are you doing that? But there are other effects that analog delays got that digital delays never did yet. But on these analog voice pedals, they added these like cool little effects back in. Now this is finally, after all that preamble, now we're gonna get into cool stuff. So both of these pedals are analog voiced. This one's a straight digital delay. These two are analog voice. You know that runaway feedback thing that I did before? Both of these pedals do that. That's an analog feature. Digital delays don't do that, so they put some circuitry in here that recreated that. And they all sound different. This one sounds like this. So I have a mix control on this, so I can actually turn the volume down. Another cool thing is while it's doing this, or even while you're just playing, if you change the time, it changes the pitch. So during shows, I'll just sit here and like do this for like 5 minutes. This is so fun, right? Yeah.
How long can that sustain for?
Oh, that'll go on forever. Yeah. Until I turn the number of repeats down, then it like cuts off. So those are two super cool things that I do with delay. This is yet another reason I like delay. But I need the analog voice ones. Another thing that this compressor does, before I got the compressor, I had an EQ in the effects loop, and I had that set on just highs. Because this is an analog voice delay, so when you cut off all highs, I'm just adding them right back in. Luckily, this compressor actually does that at the same time. So I two effects at once. Let's see, that's delay, what else do I want to talk about? I think that's about it. I wanted to talk about a couple more debates in the effects world, things that you should not listen to. So I'll just warn you, like if you go on Reddit and you type in analog versus digital, it's like come at your face, right? There are other things like this. One is the order of effects on your board. Like, who was asking me, how did I come up with this? Just over the years, just whatever sounded good, I figured it out myself. But there are going to be some people that tell you, you have to put your, whatever, your wah, like, in the front. You have to put it before distortion. You can't put it after distortion. You have to put your delay before your modulation, or this before that. Don't listen to anyone. I mean, go ahead and listen to them. Put it in that order at first. Listen, and then switch it up. Listen again. See what you think. Good example. Wah. Every guitar player says, "Oh, it has to be first." It has to. Or some people say after distortion, but one of your first two pedals has to be wah. Mine is at the very end. Why? Because, again, trumpet being like a high-end instrument, if it's heeled down and it's all lows, you can't really hear much, and then as I put the toe down, it's almost like a volume pedal. Yeah. So if I have it here, so then it starts to cut through the band, especially with the band playing. If there's a band playing like bass and drums and stuff, you're not going to hear that like this end. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, the last like kind of practical thing that I want to say is, how do you get power to all of these things? Most pedals have a very similar style adapter. It's like a barrel style, 9-volt tip negative. And as you can see, I have basically a daisy chain. They all go into this guy, daisy chain through, and this has plenty of power for like 20 pedals, so you don't have to worry about it. Some of these guys, like this one, has a proprietary power source, so I plug that in there, and then of course this is for my mic. I drop all of the things on my board, like the power strip and everything, but they actually make a little brick-like thing about this size that you plug in with a big cable, and you can just plug in the adapters to that. So you don't need big like wall boards like that. And so that's the other option for that. But you do need power for these guys. A lot of pedals take batteries, but I don't recommend that because you don't want to worry about it just cutting out in the middle of your show. So I'd say plug them in.
That happened to me with an UV once.
Nice.
It was like a low stakes sort of chain. Yeah, AA batteries.
Yeah. Also mics. Some of these clip-on mics take batteries, and I'm like, no, I don't want to risk running out in the middle of a show. This, of course, this is rechargeable, so it also has a battery, could run out, but at least if you recharge at the beginning of every gig, you're much less likely to lose power.
So, I know it's not the mic. How long would that last if you like fully charge it?
So I literally got this system like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but the previous system I had was basically the same thing with the larger bass unit. That thing, it would easily get through 2 gigs. Like if I forget to charge it for a second gig, it wouldn't give me any problems. But I want to say it's like kind of 6 to 8 hours, maybe. Not much more than that. The
Is
one
it RF? Like how does it transmit the signal?
it goes from here.
I mean, what kind of?
It's
transmission?
radio frequency.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, K-band. Not positive.
Sorry, just
But yeah, it's
nerd question from a nerd.
and also it's a good question to ask because in Europe, they actually have different bandwidths that are allowed and different that are illegal.
Mm-hmm.
There is a bandwidth that's legal in the United States that's very common for mics that is illegal in Europe. Last time I went.
Range with that?
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're in the middle of explaining about.
Good.
But can you get good range with the RF like that? Can you walk around and stuff?
You can.
Yeah.
I generally try not to walk too far away, but
Yeah.
I think, well, you know what? Let's do this.
It's a good out of the street.
Oh, okay.
No, it's
Keep going. We gotta get that on
That's a good video.
That's so great.
So yeah, it does have some range.
How far out the door did you get?
Oh, I just closed the door. There were people talking out there. I didn't want to interrupt them. The thing that you do need to worry about sometimes is interference with other people using, like guitar players using the wireless thing, or like vocalists using wireless mics.
Right.
There's only one place that I've ever had problems, and that is an event space in New Jersey, right by not too far from the Statue of Liberty. For some reason, that place has stupid interference, and I sometimes end up just using an actual wires mic.
Easy, just talk about Jersey.
Yeah, I don't even do that. It's a perfectly valid option. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Thank you for putting up with me. Do you have any more questions, or now is the time that I wanted some audience participation happening
I
here?
suggest, because it's 7:50, we're coming up on an hour, we have space until like 8:30, so we're good on time, but maybe like 5 minutes of just like some light stretching. in
Oh,
that
sure,
time.
sure, yeah,
I would like to
actually.
like informally ask you some things, and then maybe we can see how we can communally make
Yeah.
music based off of your,
Sounds good.
all that, so you can just take a.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. I meant to work in a break into this whole thing, but I guess I was just too excited that I just kept on going. But good suggestion.
I just want to come look at this up close.
Yeah. Please do.
So you're stepping on me.
For your slash number, did you have that manufactured?
No. It's a Holden.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't make them anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, that is a production one.
What is it called?
It's called the Firebird.
Firebird.
Maynard Ferguson invented it.
God.
Do you know the Super Bowl? He also invented the Super Bowl. He invented the Super Bowl first. That has a full-length trombone slide. It's a trombone, has a full-length trombone slide and valve.
Okay. I've seen
This one though, a trumpet is too small to cut off enough metal to make a full slide. This is only a 4-position slide. That goes this far.
It
Mike's
goes into
talking
the
to that,
semi-semi.
right?
Hmm?
The mic is talking to this, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's a,
What was that?
so the mic is talking to
Yep,
that,
that's
yeah?
the bass unit. And then
And
this is the
how-
quarter
and
inch
how
that
again?
comes out.
Like, just,
Oh, magic. Yeah. No, I mean, so this, the mic, has an electronic signal. So when you play into the mic, it's already an electronic signal, right?
oh,
So then this sends that whatever electrical information, it just sends it to that. I don't know if it's zeros or ones or if it's like frequencies or whatever, but that's what it's doing.
gotcha. That's cool.
Or magic. One or the other. Decide.
So cool. I really wish I played with that.
Well, I mean, you can also use effects on drums or anything else you want. I mean, there's no reason not to.
A little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know why I take it.
Oh, hey, you're just
See if I'm still recording.